The 90s may be seen by a lot of people as the last great decade for country music, but it wasn't a great sound of music that came to Nashville overnight. Many years artists paid their dues in the decades before the 90s, and the artists from the past decade would lay the groundwork for the sound to come. With country music losing its edge in the early 80s, many felt that pop country was the future of the country sound. As we look at each year from the 80s to the end of the 1990s, we find that pop country was a dividing influence on the sound of the 90s, as well as the raw country sounds of the past. The artists that grew up in the pop country era would take sounds, mixing it with old style country for a new neo-pop country that was true to its roots and made a lasting impression for years to come.
Your cheating heart will make you weep.
Hank Williams Jr. was born to be a singer, and as a kid, many thought he was born to be a clone of his famous father, Hank Williams. As a kid, Hank, he had no problem acting like his father for the fans, but as an adult, he found it hard to be someone he wasn't, and always standing in the shadows of his very famous father.
And of course, I was a little boy. 8, 10, 12, 14, 15, 16, and that's all I wanted to do. You know, I wanted to put on those boots, and I wanted a hat, and I wanted everything just like him, see. But in the late teens and early 20s, I didn't want to do that because I wasn't a little boy anymore. It was fun for a little boy, but it was hell for a man.
So he finally decided it was time to be himself, to do his own music his own way. It was either that or just stop performing altogether. In the early 70s, he would find some success scoring top 10 singles. His first number one would come in 1970 with All for the Love of Sunshine.
All for the love of sunshine. All for the love of sunshine.
However, Hank still felt he wasn't really doing his own thing. Even if he was now doing his own songs, he decided to pack up and get away from Nashville. He would move to Alabama and try to not only get his music on track, but his personal life also, which at the time was being consumed with drinking, drugs, and issues with a number of women. There he started to hang out with the harder side of country music. He found he fit in with the southern rock crowd more than the Nashville sound. This would lead him to recording an album with his new friends, one with a more southern rock style called Hank Williams Jr. and Friends. However, Hank would almost lose his life just months before the release of the album. While on a hunting trip, Hank Jr. would take a 500 fall as he was climbing up Ajax Mountain in Montana.
Because I never thought I'd see again or live, number one, when I was still out of it. Then I didn't know if I'd see again, or if I could talk and, you know, all these operations and stuff. If I could walk out on a stage or look at a girl or an audience or anything anymore. It makes you appreciate life, and it makes a lot of the trivial things go way down the list, you know.
Did you make any kind of deals with God when you were laying on that mountain?
Yeah, I said, I don't want to die. Lord, I can't see much. I can't feel much. I don't think I can hardly talk at all. The roof of my mouth, most of my teeth is not there. And I told you many times I never wanted to sing again, and I think we've got a square deal.
The new album was released December of 1975 on MGM Records, but with Hank Jr. still in a hospital bed, the album got little promotion. It would peak at number 17, and the two singles, Stoned at the Jukebox and Living Proof, would have little impact on the singles chart. It seems his breakthrough album wasn't going to be the breakthrough he hoped it would. Even if the album was being praised by most critics, at the time calling it a new fresh sound for Hank Williams Jr. Hank Jr. would recover from his fall and release a new album in 1977 entitled One Night Stands, but it also would find little success, just as its follow-up, New South, would also struggle. It might seem like Hank Williams Jr.'s new style wasn't working, but on the road his concerts were drawing a huge crowd, and a rowdy one at that.
Hey, good looking, what you got cooking? How about cooking something up with me? He say, hey, Don't you think, baby, we can find us a brand new recipe?
This would cause him to have a growing fan base, but Nashville wasn't really pushing his sound to the right people. In 1979, he would release the album Family Tradition. Its title track would finally break Hank Jr. out of the shadows and give him a fan base outside of the concert tours. Family Tradition would hit number 4 on the singles chart, and that album would go gold. He would follow that up with a new album called Whiskey Been and Hellbound, and that title song would reach number 2. Hank Jr. might have seemed like a new artist in the late 70s, but his Whiskey Been and Hellbound album was his 30th album released. Finally, Hank Williams Jr. was finding success on his own. His following albums would all reach the top of the charts, and his singles would all reach the top 5, with Texas Women being his first number 1 in the 80s. Even if he was racking up ticket sales, record sales, and releasing number 1 songs, he was still being overlooked by the Nashville higher-ups that ran country music. Most of them felt he was just too wild, too crazy to work with, and didn't fit into the country music mold that was popular at the time. By the end of 1982, 8 of his albums would be on the Billboard's Top 100 album charts at one time, something no other artist had done.
I don't have to explain it to you. You take the name Hank Williams Jr. and say he's going to have 8 albums on the Billboard charts. You tell him that in 1974 or 5 and say, what? No way, you must be crazy.
Hank Jr. kept pushing on with his wild concerts and albums that got better with each release. By 1987, there was no way for the Nashville big shots to ignore him. He would end 1987 taking home CMA's biggest award, Entertainer of the Year, and that honor would also be given to him by the ACM.
And the winner is Hank Williams Jr.
Yeah. This is the one. This is the one old Bo Seaber's been looking for, I guarantee you. I got to looking so long, I thought I was going to run out of glasses there for a few years.
The new neo-traditional country sound that was taking over country music in 1986 didn't slow down in 1987, as now every record company wanted their next Randy Travis, Dwight Yoakam, or Reba McEntire. Randy Travis would follow up his huge 1986 success with even more success when his single, Forever and Ever Amen, would spend 3 weeks at number 1. The last song to hit number 1 on the country charts more than 1 week was Lost in the 50s Tonight by Ronnie Milsap in 1985. Between that time and 1987, 85 songs would hit number 1.
As sure as I live, this love that I give is gonna be yours until the day that I die.
In 1986, it was the boys of country music that broke out as the hottest new artist. But 1987, it would be time for the female artists to break out. Holly Dunn started her career by performing in a band called Freedom Folk Singers and would tour mostly in the South. After college, she found herself as a demo singer as her and her brother wrote songs for CBS Records. The two would write the top 10 hit, I'm Not Through Loving You Yet by Louise Mandrell.
Stop acting like you've already left. I'm not through loving you yet. Don't you turn your back.
This would lead to Holly Dunn getting a record deal with MTM Records. The first 2 singles, Playing for Keeps and My Heart Holds On, failed to have any real success on the singles charts. Her breakout would come with a song that she wrote about her father called Daddy's Hands. It would hit number 7 in 1986.
I remember Daddy's hands folded silently in prayer and reaching out to hold me when I had a nightmare.
By 1987, top 10 singles would keep coming, with Love Someone Like Me, Only When I Love, and Strangers Again. She would even team up with Michael Martin Murphey for Facing the Crowd and hit number 4. Another female to break into the scene was 45-year-old KT Oslin. Her 1987 album, 80's Lady, would hit number 1, and its title song would go to number 7. The follow-up single, Do Ya, and I'll Always Come Back both hit number 1.
Do you whisper my name just to bring a little comfort?
KT had gotten her start in college when she formed a folk trio band with Dave Jones and Guy Clark. They all three would perform around Texas. KT would even try her hand at acting, as she would go on a national tour with the play Hello Dolly and be part of the Broadway show West Side Story. In 1986, she would borrow $7,000 from her aunt, lose 40 pounds, rent a Nashville nightclub, and invite record executives to see her one-time showcase. The next day, she waited by the phone, waiting for those offers to come in. She waited and waited. No calls. KT felt it was over, but her close friend got her a meeting with Harold Seed, a Nashville producer who had successfully worked with Alabama. This would lead to a meeting with RCA Records, who would sign her up for a record deal. Although the new neo-traditional sound was being seen as the new sound of country music, it was clear that the sound of country music in the 80s was all kinds of sounds. Pop country was still having success, acts like Hank Williams Jr. in Alabama was showing more of a rock side of country music, and one of the most different artists to come out of the new era was a Texas singer-songwriter named Lyle Lovett. Lyle would write songs and play them around the A&M campus as a solo act during his free time. His name didn't take long to get around the state, as fans of the folk scene was falling in love with his unique music. He would sign a deal as a songwriter in the mid-80s, but he would release his first album in 1986.
How did you get your record contract?
Well, the folks at MCA heard it, and then the publishing company I started working with, Criterion Music, took it out to Curb Records out there in Los Angeles, and they played it for the folks at MCA. And
his 1987 album, Pontiac, would be called a masterpiece by many critics. Rolling Stone magazine in 2004 would place it in their list of the 500 best albums of all times. He never was a huge hit when it came to singles, but his albums would sell big to his growing fan base. Over at the CMAs, the new sound of country music was racking up the awards. Randy Travis's Forever and Never Amen would take home both single and song of the year, and Randy Travis would pick up Male Vocalist of the Year, and his second album, Always and Forever, would win Best Album. Reba McEntire would take home Female Vocalist of the Year, with the Judge winning Vocal Group of the Year. By 1987, the country music field was crowded with new artists. That crowd at times would make it hard for older, established artists to get much airplay on country radio, as the limited airtime was being filled with new acts. However, some of the classic country singers were still finding success. Merle Haggard would release his top 10 album, Chill Factor, and this lead-off single, Twinkle Twinkle Lucky Star, would hit number 1.
Twinkle, twinkle, lucky star, you send me love from where you are.
George Jones's 1986 album, Wine Color Roses, would hit the top 5, with its second single, Wine Color Roses, hitting number 8 in 1987.
Some wine-colored roses, the color of
Conway Twitty would have 3 top 10 singles in a row with Julia, I Want to Know You Before We Make Love, and That's My Job, all from his album Borderline.
That's my job. That's what I do.
Waylon Jennings would hit number 1 with Rose in Paradise and follow that up with 2 more top 10 singles, and his album would hit the top 20.
I was born through hell on sun. Keep my rose in paradise.
Kenny Rogers and Ronnie Milsap would team up for Make No Mistake, She's Mine and take it to the top of the charts.
She's mine. She's mine. No, Kenny, she's mine.
The new artist might have been the hottest thing in Nashville, but radio and the fans were still supporting the older ones that came before. Every record label in 1987 was looking for the next big star, their Randy Travis. It would take until 1988 to show Columbia Records that they already had the next big thing already in 1987, as his 2 singles would jumpstart another overnight success story in country music for 1988.